Welcome back to the System Read. I'm Marcus, and today we are tearing down the architecture of the modern yes. We're talking about Greg McKeown's Essentialism, which I honestly believe is the ultimate firmware upgrade for the human operating system. We live in a world that is fundamentally broken by noise, Sarah. We're being buried under a mountain of trivialities, and essentialism is the only way to unearth the few things that actually matter.
Here we go again. Marcus, I've read the book, and while the less but better mantra sounds lovely on a Pinterest board, we have to talk about the reality of the room. You call it a firmware upgrade, but to me it feels like a manual written for someone who doesn't have a boss, a mortgage, or a toddler with a fever. It's a philosophy of privilege disguised as a productivity hack.
Is it privilege, or is it the ultimate form of responsibility? Look at the world we're in right now. AI tools are generating content at a rate we can't even process. We have endless notifications vibrating in our pockets like a digital slot machine. We're suffering from what McKeown calls the undisciplined pursuit of more. More emails, more Slack channels, more side hustles in the creator economy. We're making a millimeter of progress in a million directions when we should be going big on the vital few.
But Marcus, that millimeter of progress is often what keeps people employed in a remote work culture that expects 24/7 responsiveness. You mentioned notifications. If I don't respond to my manager's Slack message within 5 minutes, I'm not being an essentialist. I'm being unreliable. Society is totally unprepared for the preponderance of choice McKeown talks about because most people feel like they don't actually have a choice. They feel they have to do it all.
But that's the trap. That's the siren song of non-essentialism. McKeown argues that "I have to" is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of a trade-off. When we forfeit our right to choose, we give others explicit permission to choose for us. If you don't prioritize your life, Sarah, I guarantee your boss, your colleagues, and the algorithm will.
Oh, I'll just go tell my landlord I'm prioritizing my life and selecting only the top 10% of my bills to pay this month. Marcus, look at the example of the executive in the book, Sam Elliott. He was offered an early retirement package before he started saying no to everything. He had a massive safety net. For an entry-level creator or a remote worker in a high-pressure tech firm, daring to say no isn't a graceful career move. It's a fast track to the layoff list.
I hear you on the economic pressure, but let's look at the paradox of success. Phase 1, you're focused, you succeed. Phase 2, you get a reputation as the go-to person. Phase 3, you're spread too thin. Phase 4, your success actually undermines the very clarity that made you successful in the first place. We see this in burnout culture every day. People are majoring in minor activities, and they're overworked but underutilized. Is it better to be busy and fail at everything, or to be selective and deliver extraordinary results?
It's not about better. It's about safety. We live in a hustle culture where being busy is a status symbol. If you aren't crushing it and grinding, you're invisible. McKeown talks about protecting the asset, which is ourselves. But in the creator economy, the asset is the algorithm's favor. If you stop posting, stop responding, stop doing, the system deletes you. How does an essentialist survive digital irrelevance?
By becoming too valuable to ignore. Look at the 90% rule. If you evaluate an option, a project, a collaboration, a meeting, and it's not a 9 out of 10, it's a 0. Most of us are living our lives in the 60s and 70s. We're straddling strategies like Continental Airlines tried to do against Southwest. They tried to be low cost and premium at the same time, and they crashed. Essentialism is about making one-time decisions that make 1,000 future decisions. It's about essential intent, making your goals so concrete and inspirational that the non-essentials just fall away.
One decision that makes 1,000. That sounds like a productivity app's marketing slogan. But let's talk about the human cost of that no. McKeown says we should separate the decision from the relationship. He says people will respect us more if we say no firmly and gracefully. But Marcus, have you ever tried saying no to emotional labor? Have you ever said no to a friend in crisis because it wasn't essential to your long-term goals? There is a coldness to essentialism that ignores the messy, beautiful, non-essential chaos of being a person.
It's not cold, it's compassionate. If I say yes to everyone, I'm giving them a diluted, exhausted version of myself. McKeown tells the story of the man who went to a client meeting while his wife was in the hospital with their newborn daughter. He said yes to please, and he ended up hurting his family, his integrity, and even the client didn't respect him for it. That's the fool's bargain we make every day. We think we're being nice, but we're actually being dishonest about our limits.
That story is heartbreaking. I'll give you that. But that's an extreme. Most of our lives are spent in the gray zone of commitments. And this is where I think essentialism fails the ADHD brain or the neurodivergent worker. The book talks about the genius of routine and flow. It says routine allows the brain to autopilot execution. But for many people, routine is a prison. And the digital distraction, Marcus, it's not just a lack of discipline. It's how these tools are designed to hijack our dopamine.
Which is exactly why we need a system. McKeown talks about overhauling your triggers. If your phone is the cue for non-essential scrolling, you have to create a new trigger. You have to design for the slowest hiker, the part of your life that's creating the most friction. If decision fatigue is your Herbie, you automate those decisions. You use zero-based budgeting for your time. You don't ask, what should I do today? You ask, what is the one thing I would do if I were starting from scratch?
Zero-based budgeting for my life. Marcus, you're turning existence into an accounting exercise. What happened to play? Even McKeown admits play is essential for innovation and reducing stress. He says, nothing fires up the brain like play. But if every moment of my day is designed and edited and prioritized, where is the room for the unexpected spark? If I eliminate everything that isn't a 9 out of 10, I might eliminate the weird 3 out of 10 hobby that eventually becomes my life's passion.
But play is an essential activity in the system. It's not a trivial diversion, it's a driver of exploration. The essentialist explores more options than the non-essentialist because they don't commit to anything until they find the vital few. The non-essentialist is too busy responding to emails to actually play or think. They're too busy doing to think about life. I'm arguing that by cutting out the junk, you create the space to escape. Bill Gates takes a think week twice a year. That's not an indulgence, it's a strategy.
Again with the Bill Gates examples. Most people get 2 weeks of vacation a year, and they spend half of it answering urgent emails because their workplace has no boundaries. McKeown talks about the freedom of setting boundaries. He mentions the professor who refused to work on Saturdays for his family. That is a beautiful ideal. But in a global remote work economy, Saturday is just Tuesday in a different time zone. If you aren't available, you're replaced.
Then the system is broken, and essentialism is the quiet revolution we need to fix it. If every employee pushed back against time-wasting emails and unproductive meetings, companies would be forced to focus on their highest point of contribution. We celebrate busy as a measurement of importance, but it's actually a sign of failure. We need to protect the asset. If you're sleep-deprived, your ability to prioritize, your most important skill, is compromised. You become a zombie who can't tell the difference between the trivial and the vital.
I agree that we're all tired, Marcus. Decision fatigue is real. The opinion overload from social media is real. But I worry that essentialism becomes just another should. Now, on top of being a perfect worker and a perfect parent, I have to be a perfect essentialist who says no with grace and keeps a journal every day. It feels like another form of hustle, the hustle of less.
It's not about being perfect. McKeown admits he still struggles with it himself. It's a disciplined pursuit. It's about small wins and minimal viable progress. You don't overhaul your life overnight. You cut one darling at a time. You add a 50% buffer to your time estimate so you aren't always slamming on the brakes. It's about living by design, not by default.
Living by design. It sounds like we're trying to turn ourselves into a Dieter Rams record player. No clutter, just a clear plastic cover. But life is messy, Marcus. It's full of sunk costs and endowment effects. We value things just because we own them, and we stay in toxic jobs or relationships because we've already sunk so much time into them. McKeown says to ask, if I weren't already invested, how much would I invest now? That is a terrifying question to ask a 40-year-old career.
It's a liberating question. It's how you uncommit and win big by cutting your losses. The Concorde jet was a financial disaster for 40 years because governments couldn't admit it was a mistake. We do the same with our lives. We circle pointlessly because we're ashamed to admit we were wrong. But admitting failure is the beginning of success. It's about metanoia, a transformation of the heart.
Is it a transformation of the heart, or just a very efficient edit of our soul? You're talking about killing your darlings, but sometimes the darlings are what make life worth living. The unexpected opportunities, the random coffee with a stranger, the inefficient afternoon. If I eliminate everything non-essential, am I still human? Or am I just a high-performing algorithm?
You're more human because you're finally present. You're living in kairos, the opportune moment, not just chronos, the ticking clock. You're the sushi chef Jiro Ono, entirely in the moment. You aren't multi-focusing, which is a lie. You're actually there. When you sit with your children, you aren't checking your phone. You're wrestling on the trampoline. You're choosing the joy in the journey, not just the destination.
Joy in the journey. I want that, Marcus. I think everyone listening to this wants that. But I still fear that in our current system, essentialism is a survival strategy for the elite, while the rest of us are stuck in the undisciplined pursuit of more, just to stay afloat.
Then let's make it a movement. Let's start by asking the essential question. What is important now? Not tomorrow, not in the next meeting, but right now. If we all eliminated just one good but non-essential activity, imagine the space we would create for things that are truly vital.
It's a beautiful vision. I'm still skeptical about the how, but I can't argue with the why. We are all stretched too thin, majoring in minor activities. Maybe I'll start by editing my notifications.
That's a small win, Sarah. And that's where it begins. Essentialism isn't one more thing to do. It's a different way of doing everything. It's about living a life that really matters.
All right. But if I don't answer your next email for 3 days, don't complain. I'm just being an essentialist.
I'll respect the boundary, as long as you're protecting the asset.
Protecting the asset. I think I can get behind that.
Thanks for joining the debate. Now, stop listening to us, put down your phone, and go do the one thing that's actually essential today.
If you can even figure out what that is.
Ask yourself the question. We'll be here when you're ready to uncommit.
Goodbye, Marcus.
Goodbye, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to this discussion on the System Read podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to ensure you don't miss our upcoming deep dives.